Have you ever been bullied so relentlessly that you fantasized about making your tormentor drink something they'd never forget? One British student didn't just fantasize, he mixed up a special cola cocktail using his own bodily fluids. And what happened next will make you gag and cheer at the same time. Stick around because today's revenge stories make torture look like child's play. Hello everyone, welcome back to Wow Amazing. In this video, we'll explore part 2 of the most extreme revenge stories that went too far. But before we begin, we would like you to subscribe to Wow Amazing and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on amazing and entertaining content that will surely get you amazed. Now prepare yourself because this video is absolutely packed with tales that will make you question whether some people are secretly criminal masterminds just waiting for the right moment to snap. Story 10. Raccoon Rampage. Let's start with a tale that proves heartbreak can turn anyone into a wildlife trafficker. It's 1998 in South Carolina, and our guy DM just got his heart stomped on when his girlfriend ditched him for another dude named Chad. Now, Chad wasn't just any random guy. He lived in the same apartment complex and drove a Camaro that he treated like his firstborn child. You know the type, probably spent more on car wax than most people spend on groceries. So there's DM, nursing his broken heart and staring at Chad's precious ride every single day like a constant reminder of his romantic failure. Most people would cry and move on, but DM, he had a plan that would make even the most seasoned pranksters say, "Dude, that's too far." First, our heartbroken hero set up an animal trap behind a Chinese restaurant and waited. About a week later, jackpot. He'd caught 2 massive, stinking raccoons. These were full-sized, angry, probably rabid-looking beasts that had been dining on questionable dumpster cuisine for who knows how long. Next came the technical part. DM worked at an auto shop, so he borrowed a vehicle entry kit, basically professional braking and entering tools. At 1 a.m., when the world was silent and security cameras were probably taking a nap, our guy crept down to the parking lot with his cage fury balls and located Chad's beloved Camaro. Pop goes the lock, and in went the raccoons. 2 absolutely livid animals, locked inside a confined space that smelled like Chad's cheap cologne and broken dreams. Then DM scurried back to bed like nothing happened, probably sleeping better than he had in weeks. The next morning, Chad woke up to what can only be described as a biological warfare crime scene. His precious Camaro looked like it had been used as a UFC octagon for 2 very angry, very messy opponents. We're talking poop, pee, claw marks, and a stench that probably violated several Geneva Convention protocols. Chad faced thousands in repair costs and the impossible task of getting raccoon funk out of leather seats. In the end, he had to scrap the entire car. I bet those bus rides to work gave him plenty of time to think about treating people better. Story 9. The Carolina Reaper Revenge. Now, if you think workplace lunch theft is just a minor annoyance, let me introduce you to Detroit from our next story, who turned cafeteria crime into a medical emergency. Working at a massive factory in 2015, Detroit was dealing with a lunch bandit who'd been raiding his meals for an entire week straight. This was actually a systematic food terrorism. The factory was huge, with dozens of temporary workers coming and going daily, making it nearly impossible to catch the culprit through normal detective work. So, Detroit decided if this jerk wanted his lunch so badly, they could absolutely have it. But they definitely weren't going to enjoy the experience. That night, Detroit crafted what looked like the most delicious fajitas you've ever seen. Perfectly seasoned, beautifully presented, the kind of meal that would make your mouth water just looking at it. But hidden in that innocent-looking salsa was enough Carolina Reaper peppers to melt the face off a statue. For those who don't know, Carolina Reapers were once considered the hottest peppers on earth. The next morning, Detroit strolled into work, popped his creation in the fridge, and went about his business. Within an hour, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the lunchroom that probably shattered windows in 3 counties. Detroit followed the chaos to find a man on the floor, gasping for air, while worried coworkers surrounded him. Turns out the intense heat had triggered a severe asthma attack in our lunch thief, and he had to be rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. The guy survived, but I'm betting he never looked at another person's meal the same way again. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of justice, and sometimes it comes with a side of medical bills. Story 8. The gold digger's downfall. Imagine this. You marry a rich older man, he dies, leaves you money but gives his house to his son, and you think you can just take over anyway. Well, one gold digger learned the hard way that legal ownership beats entitlement every single time. After Reddit user Young Sour Sweet's mom passed away at just 55, his lonely dad fell for Grace, a woman 15 years younger who had "gold digger" written all over her designer handbag. See, dear old dad was a successful investment banker, making him prime real estate for someone looking to upgrade their lifestyle through marriage. But their fairy tale didn't last long. Dad passed away not long after tying the knot. Predictably, he left Grace a huge sum of money. But here's where it gets interesting. He left the family home to Swede, and Grace absolutely could not stand that. Within months, Grace was already shacked up with a new guy named Ivan, and both were treating Swede's house like their personal love nest. The audacity was off the charts, acting like they owned the place when the deed literally had someone else's name on it. But Swede put up with their entitled behavior out of respect for his late father. Then Grace crossed the line that ended everything. She gave away Swede's PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because she decided Swede was too old for video games. That was it. Game over, literally. When Grace announced she and Ivan were leaving the country to get married and asked Swede to watch the house, his own house, our guy just smiled and agreed. The moment their plane took off, Swede went full nuclear. He hired movers to take every single one of Grace's belongings and dump them in rental storage, changed all the locks, started advertising the place for rent. When Grace returned from her honeymoon expecting to resume her queen bee lifestyle, she found a lovely family living in what she thought was her castle. After throwing the tantrum of the century, Grace's lawyers had to gently remind her that the house legally belonged to Swede, and she had zero rights to it. Just like that, Grace and Ivan went from living it up in a mansion to being completely homeless. What a wedding present. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock on your door, it changes the locks and moves someone else in. Story 7, the Slideshow Shock. Imagine planning the perfect anniversary party for 78 guests, only to discover your spouse is cheating. Do you cancel? No, you turn it into the most savage public execution in relationship history, complete with photographic evidence. If public humiliation is an art form, then Josiah from our next story is basically Picasso. When his friend Ayat spotted Josiah's wife Mercy getting cozy with a guy named Payman at a party. Like a good friend, Ayat snapped photos of the betrayal and rushed to tell Josiah, who was understandably heartbroken. On the other side, Josiah and Mercy had already planned a massive anniversary party for 78 people, just 6 weeks away. Most people would cancel and eat the deposits, not Josiah. He saw an opportunity to turn his pain into the most epic public service announcement in relationship history. Over the next 6 weeks, Josiah let his closest friends in on the secret and turned them into a surveillance network. They built quite the portfolio of evidence. The night of the party finally arrived, and Mercy was practically glowing with excitement to show off a romantic slideshow of her and Josiah to all their family and friends. But when those first images hit the screen, her face went from beaming to horrified in about 2 seconds flat. There on the big screen, in front of 78 witnesses, including both sets of parents, were photos and videos of Mercy's extracurricular activities with Payman. Not a single image of her loving husband, just damning evidence of her affair playing like a twisted movie trailer. Mercy begged Josiah to stop the show, but he was just getting started. After the visual evidence finished destroying her reputation, Josiah stood up and told the entire tale of betrayal to the gather crowd before slapping divorce papers in his soon-to-be ex-wife's hands. His parting words, "Don't ever say my name again with your disgusting and toxic mouth." Then he walked out, leaving Mercy to face 78 people who now knew exactly what kind of person she really was. Sometimes the best revenge is just showing people the truth in high definition. Story 6, the Poop Cannon Chronicles. Prepare yourself for a story so disgusting, it makes garbage day smell like a flower garden. When 8-year-old Jeff's mom was dealing with their neighbor Scott, she discovered that sometimes the best weapons are the ones your enemy provides himself. Scott had parked his massive motorhome right outside Jeff's house, turning their peaceful street into his personal RV resort. When Jeff's mom politely asked him to move it, he eventually agreed. Problem solved, right? Wrong. A few days later, the mobile mansion was back, blocking their view and probably violating 17 different HOA rules. Round 2 of negotiations didn't go as smoothly. This time, Scott unleashed a torrent of swears and insults, refused to budge an inch, and just to add insult to injury, started throwing his trash all over Jeff's yard like some kind of garbage fairy. But Scott's biggest mistake? His dog had been using Jeff's lawn as a personal bathroom for weeks, and he never bothered cleaning it up. It was a blazing hot summer, and Jeff's mom had a brilliant, albeit revolting, idea. She spent the afternoon collecting Scott's dog's donations from around the yard. And trust me, there was plenty of material to work with. Then, like some sort of medieval alchemist brewing a potion of pure nastiness, she mixed it all with water in a container until it became what Jeff later described as forbidden chocolate milk. The weapon of choice? Jeff's squirt gun, loaded with this grotesque brown ammunition. Jeff's mom went full Rambo on Scott's motorhome, covering every inch of that thing in her special recipe. In the summer heat, the mixture baked hard like some kind of organic concrete, creating what can only be described as the most epic stink bomb in human history. The next morning, Scott emerged to find his once beautiful home on wheels, looking like it had been squeezed out of a giant's digestive system. The smell was so toxic that Jeff and his mom had to flee into their house to avoid the fumes. Without a word, Scott climbed into his mobile nightmare and drove away forever. Legend has it he's still driving around America, desperately searching for a car wash brave enough to tackle that job. Some smells, my friends, are eternal. Story 5. The Debt Collector's Victory. What would you do if someone promised to love you in sickness and in health, then bailed the moment things got tough? If you're Walt from our next story, you'd turn that betrayal into the most expensive lesson in karma ever taught. Walt thought he'd found his soulmate in Anna, who had a degenerative condition that would eventually put her in a wheelchair. Instead of running, Walt embraced their future together, even planning to build them a wheelchair-accessible dream home using his construction business. To prepare, he invested over $30,000 of his own money, improving Anna's current place, running everything through his business to increase the property value for when they'd eventually sell and move in together. Then something surprising happened in their life. Walt was diagnosed with cancer, but Anna stepped up just like Walt had planned to do for her, helping with appointments, care, the whole 9 yards. Everything seemed to be on track until Walt suggested they put her house on the market and officially move in together. Suddenly, Anna became distant, cold, unreachable. Then came the time that would make Satan himself cringe. Anna broke up with Walt because she said she couldn't imagine taking care of someone for a long time. She left her fiancé, who had cancer, because it felt like too much trouble, even though she knew she'd need the same kind of care someday, and Walt was ready to be there for her. When Walt went to drop off her belongings, he discovered Anna and a longtime friend getting intimate on the couch. Turns out she'd been cheating for months before the breakup. The betrayal was complete. 9 months later, Walt had fought off cancer and was doing really well. While going through paperwork, he found the invoices for all the work he'd done on Anna's house, $32,680 plus interest. Time to collect. Walt's lawyers made it very clear that Anna owed every penny, and since she was selling the house anyway, she had to pay up. After settling her mortgage and paying Walt his dues, she was left with basically nothing and had to move in with her daughter like a scolded teenager. But karma wasn't done yet. A few years later, Walt, now cancer-free and successful, bumped into Anna. She was haggard, wheelchair-bound, and desperate to get back together. Walt's response was, "No, I just couldn't see myself looking after someone long-term." Story 4. The Community Blacklist. Don't mess with people in tight-knit communities. That's the lesson from our next story about Walter, a World War II veteran who turned an entire town into his personal army of justice. When Walter's son George was brutally attacked by 3 local criminals named Flynn, Mac, and Zeno, leaving him disabled and forced into early retirement, Walter decided these scumbags weren't going to get away with it. Walter and his buddies, all disgusted by what happened to George, started spreading the truth about the attack throughout their Rust Belt town. In a place where everyone worked at the local car plant and everybody knew everybody, word traveled fast. Soon the entire community was talking about what these 3 had done. The trio all worked at the car plant, And when their co-workers heard the news, they were beyond ticked off. Slowly but surely, Flynn, Mac, and Zeno found themselves getting the worst shifts, having their tools mysteriously disappear, and generally experiencing workplace hell courtesy of their disgusted colleagues. After a year of this treatment, all three quit in frustration, but their problems were just beginning. Thanks to their reputation, nobody in town would hire them. With no jobs and decreasing cash, they quickly became homeless. But Walter wasn't done. For the rest of their miserable lives, he and his friends kept eye on the trio. Whenever they seemed close to getting back on their feet or landing a job, Walter's network would start the rumor mill again, making sure their reputation followed them everywhere. As far as anyone knows, Flynn, Mac, and Zeno never escaped their predicament. They learned the hard way that in a small community, your reputation is everything, and some stains never wash out. Story 3. The vodka sabotage. When your best friend kicks you out of her room to hook up with your ex, you've got two choices: cry about it or serve her a special drink that'll turn the night into a vomit-filled nightmare she'll never forget. And that's exactly what happened when teenage friendships went too far in Sweden, where Ellen took betrayal payback to levels that would make a bartender weep. It all started during what should have been a simple girls' night between Ellen and her friend Lynn. They were having drinks and bonding until Lynn suggested inviting Ben, who happened to be Ellen's ex that she still had feelings for. Ellen reluctantly agreed on one condition: the girls would stick together and Ben would sleep elsewhere. It seemed like a reasonable compromise until Lynn decided promises were more like suggestions. After Ben arrived, Lynn quickly ditched Ellen, kicked her out of the room, and brought Ben in for some alone time. As Ellen was leaving, she noticed how drunk Lynn already was and had a deliciously evil idea. She encouraged her backstabbing friend to have a few more drinks before heading downstairs. Almost immediately, Ben called Ellen back up for help. Lynn had puked all over the floor and was clearly way too intoxicated. Ellen was tasked with getting Lynn some water to help sober her up. But our revengeful heroine had other plans. Instead of water, she handed her so-called friend a glass filled with straight vodka, then ran off to leave the lovebirds alone. The rest of the night was filled with the sweet sounds of Lynn violently throwing up while Ben stressed out about it. Ellen got to listen to this symphony of consequences like the world's most satisfying white noise machine. Story 2. The bulletproof mailbox. Some teenagers thought it would be fun to destroy an old man's mailbox with their truck. They had no idea they were messing with a grandfather who apparently had military engineering skills and zero patience for punk kids. And when Bugs's granddad got tired of local teens bashing, burning, and yanking his mailbox clean off, he decided it was time for some old-school problem-solving. He wrapped super strong bulletproof metal around his mailbox post and concealed it behind an innocent-looking layer of wood. That night, our hero put on a ghillie suit, because apparently this grandfather was also part ninja, and lay in the grass waiting for the thugs to show up. Sure enough, the teens arrived right on schedule, ready to continue their supremacy of mailbox terror. They wrapped their chain around what they thought was just another easy target and attached it to their truck's rear bumper. This time, they were going to rip the whole thing clean out of the ground for the ultimate destruction. They floored it, expecting to see mailbox carnage in their rearview mirror. Instead, their rear bumper got ripped clean off while the mailbox stood like an immovable monument to senior revenge. Because they'd floored it expecting no resistance, the truck went flying off the road and straight into some nearby trees, turning their ride into very expensive scrap metal. The teens walked away unscathed, but their wallets definitely didn't. According to Bugs, it cost them around $50,000 to fully repair their truck. That's a pretty expensive lesson in respecting other people's property. Story 1. The ultimate bully beatdown. Our number 1 spot goes to Mark, a British fan who served up the most revolting justice in high school history. Mark was dealing with Bob, a persistent bully who had turned lunch theft into an art form. Every single day, Bob would demand Mark's drink, usually a bottle of cola, or else Mark would get a beating. At the end of his rope and tired of being terrorized over beverages, Mark went home and asked his family for advice. His uncle laughed and jokingly suggested Mark should empty half his drink and fill it back up with pee. It was clearly meant as a joke, but Mark wasn't laughing. He was serious. The next day, Mark asked for 2 drinks from home, one to keep and one for Bob to steal. Then he executed the most disgusting plan in the history of schoolyard justice. He poured out half the cola from Bob's designated bottle and topped it back up with his own personal brand of yellow revenge. Back at school, Bob stomped over like clockwork and demanded his daily tribute. Mark happily handed over the tainted bottle and struggled to contain his laughter as the brute started guzzling it down. Bob didn't get far before realizing something was very, very wrong with his stolen drink. But it gets even more better. Instead of just spitting it out and walking away, Bob passed the bottle around to all his friends, wondering if they could figure out what was wrong with it. So not only did the main bully get a taste of justice, but his entire crew got to sample Mark's special recipe. Needless to say, Bob never hassled Mark again. Sometimes the most effective anti-bullying strategy isn't talking to teachers or parents. Sometimes it's just making sure the bully remembers exactly what your revenge tastes like. And there you have it, 10 more tales of revenge that went from zero to absolutely unhinged, faster than you can say, "Don't mess with me." Which of these stories surprised or laughed you the most? Drop a comment below and let me know if you'd ever go this far for payback. Smash the like and subscribe button for more stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about human nature, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest episode. Remember, folks, revenge might be a dish best served cold, but these people served it flaming hot with a side of absolute chaos. Stay kind, stay legal, and maybe think twice before you steal someone's lunch or park your RV where it doesn't belong. This is Wow Amazing, signing off until next time.